This is a response to Adam Schiff's tweet about no one is above the law, as if the indictment of Trump is the realization of the apex of that principle or the nirvana moment. It isn't. The indictment of Trump is simply Richard Nixon 2.0, but without the pardon. This is a brief chronology of Watergate. First, there was the burglary. In 1972, the people known as the Watergate burglars broke into the DNC's offices. By 1973, Nixon had been re-elected, but the storm clouds were building. By 1974, Nixon was consumed by Watergate, and the principal reason is that Nixon engaged in inchoate or supportive criminal activity. That is, the main reason Nixon was brought down is that he helped to conceal the crime. Gerald Ford pardoned Nixon, and Nixon was sure to face indictment. So as a matter of historical precedent, the indictment of Trump is not really the apex of this principle we call no one is above the law. If we consider impeachment of presidents, and we should remember impeachment is done in two stages, the impeachment and a conviction. What we have is 4 impeachments: Andrew Johnson, Bill Clinton, Donald Trump times 2, and Richard Nixon, but Richard Nixon resigned before the impeachment process ended. There have only been 46 presidents, so presidents have been held accountable. They may have not gone to jail, but they were held accountable, at least in the political sense. That's quite a lot. Even if those presidents were not removed in the Senate trial phase or the conviction phase of impeachment, they were at least held politically accountable. And Congress flirted with the idea of impeaching many more presidents, and that list includes Thomas Jefferson, John Tyler, Grant, Cleveland, Herbert Hoover, Harry Truman, Ronald Reagan, H.W. Bush, George W. Bush, Joe Biden, Lyndon Johnson, and Barack Obama. So it's come up before. It's come up a lot. One has to view that in the context of the number of presidents we've had, 46. Let's compare that to the number of judges. There have only been 15 impeachments of judges. There are about 870 federal judges in the country. They're called Article 3 judges. So we can see that judges are almost never impeached. That means that if you really want to talk about the concept of no one is above the law, you start with the judges. And it is the judges who've come up with different rules of immunity: sovereign immunity, judicial immunity. They both generally derive from the principle that the king can do no wrong. And of course, one cannot sue the king's ministers because that would be a slander to the king. That's judicial immunity. That's just a $10 way of saying that a hell of a lot of people are really above the law. And they made up that rule for themselves. And here's where my boss used to start with the concept of no one is above the law. And of course, my boss was Archibald Cox, who was the former Solicitor General to the Kennedy administration, to President Kennedy. Professor Cox started here. There's a Supreme Court rule that states we never have held the performance of the duties of judicial officers requires or contemplates the immunization of otherwise criminal deprivations of constitutional rights. There's another case, and that states no man in this country is so high that he is above the law. No officer of the law may set that law at defiance with impunity. It's a very famous case from the 1800s, the late 1800s, and it's about General Lee. So we need to ask, who violates the most constitutional rights in this country? Historically, that has been judges. It was judges who were in league with the slavers. It was judges who were in league with the segregationists. It was judges who were in league with the Ku Klux Klan and organized crime. That's why we had to pass civil rights laws. First, there was the 14th Amendment. Then Congress saw that it wasn't doing anything on its own, and that's why we needed statutes, federal legislation, to give the 14th Amendment some teeth. But judges, they started removing themselves from the ambit of that statute, from the application of that statute. And they started removing their friends and their colleagues, their co-workers, their staff, many people. So in this country, many, many people are above the law. To suggest that this principle of no one is above the law is only about Trump is, to use Joe Biden's word, malarkey.